On a freezing Christmas Eve, a black single father named Marcus was driving his rusted delivery van through a wealthy gated community when his 6-year-old daughter screamed at him to stop. She pointed out the window at an elderly woman in an evening gown who was frantically trying to climb inside a metal charity donation bin in the middle of a blizzard. Marcus knew the rules of this neighborhood. He knew that a black man stopping his beat-up truck in front of a mansion at midnight was a good way to get the police called on him. He knew he should keep driving. But his daughter looked at him with big, tearful eyes and said, "Daddy, we can't leave her." So, Marcus pulled over. He used his tools to break into the bin to save the woman. He didn't know that this act of kindness would cost him his job, get him accused of a crime, and eventually lead to a secret legacy that would change their lives forever. Before we start this incredible story, tell us where you are watching from in the comments and hit that subscribe button, because tomorrow I have a story that will make you believe in miracles again. The heater in the van had been dead for 3 weeks. Marcus gripped the steering wheel with gloved hands, his breath coming out in white puffs that fogged up the windshield. Beside him, his 6-year-old daughter, Bella, was wrapped in 3 blankets. All he could see of her was her forehead and her braids, adorned with clear plastic beads that clicked softly every time the van hit a pothole. It was Christmas Eve in Detroit, and the city was disappearing under a blanket of white. The radio weatherman had called it a once-in-a-decade storm, but Marcus didn't need a weatherman to tell him it was bad. He could feel the tires slipping on the black ice. He could feel the wind shaking the frame of the old Ford Econoline that had seen better days 10 years ago. "Daddy, are we almost home?" Bella asked, her voice muffled by a scarf. "Almost, baby," Marcus said, trying to sound cheerful. "Just a few more miles. We're taking the shortcut." The shortcut was a risk. To save 15 minutes and maybe $2 in gas, Marcus had turned off the main highway and on a Skyline Drive. It was the main road through the hills, the wealthiest district in the county. Here, the houses weren't houses, they were castles. Massive stone walls, iron gates, driveways longer than the street Marcus lived on. The streetlights here were golden and elegant, casting a warm glow on the pristine snow that hadn't been touched by city slush. Marcus felt the familiar knot of anxiety in his chest that he always felt when he entered this zip code. He checked his speedometer. He kept it exactly at the limit. He checked his mirrors. He was a black man in a rusted work van at 11:30 p.m. on a holiday. He knew what he looked like to the people behind those high-security fences. He just wanted to get through, get home, and heat up the can of soup waiting in their pantry. Suddenly, the van shuddered. The engine gave a horrible, grinding cough, and the headlights flickered. "No, no, no," Marcus whispered, tapping the dashboard. "Don't you do this to me. Not tonight. Come on, Bessie." The van groaned one last time and rolled to a stop. The silence was sudden and terrifying. "Did we break down?" Bella asked, pulling the blanket down from her face. Marcus rested his forehead against the steering wheel. "Just for a second, sweetie. Daddy's got to fix it." He looked out the window. They were parked next to a small community park that served the gated estates. It was deserted. The snow was falling harder now, huge flakes swirling in the wind. Marcus opened the door and stepped out. The cold hit him like a physical slap. It was 5 degrees below zero. He walked to the front of the van and popped the hood. He used the flashlight on his phone to look at the engine. It was smoking. The belt had snapped. He couldn't fix this. Not here. Not without parts. He slammed the hood shut and looked around, panic rising in his throat. They were 5 miles from home. He couldn't make Bella walk in this. He would have to call a tow truck, but a tow on Christmas Eve would cost $300. He had $40 in his bank account. "Daddy." Bella's voice came from inside the van. She was tapping on the glass. "Daddy, look." Marcus turned. Bella was pointing across the street toward the edge of the park. Marcus squinted through the snow. At first, he didn't see anything. Then, movement caught his eye. Near the edge of the parking lot stood one of those large, metal charity donation bins, the kind where people dropped off old clothes. But someone was there. A figure was standing in front of the bin. It was an elderly woman. She wasn't dropping off a bag. She was climbing up the side of it. Marcus watched in disbelief as the woman, wearing what looked like a thin, silver evening gown and high heels, slipped on the ice and fell hard onto the pavement. She scrambled back up immediately, crying out, and grabbed the metal handle of the bin chute, trying to pull it open. "What is she doing?" Marcus whispered. She's stuck, Daddy. Bella yelled through the closed window. She's crying. Marcus looked at the houses nearby. Dark windows. Security cameras. If he walked over there, and a patrol car came by, what would they see? A large black man approaching a screaming white woman in the middle of the night. He knew the statistics. He knew the stories. Stay in the car, Bella, Marcus said to himself. Just call 911. But as he pulled out his phone, he saw the woman slip again. She hit her head on the metal bin. She didn't get up this time. She just lay in the snow, curling into a ball. Daddy. Bella had opened the van door. The wind whipped her braids around her face. She's hurt. We have to help her. Bella, get back inside. Marcus shouted, rushing over to buckle her back in. It's not safe. She's all alone, Daddy, Bella said, tears welling up in her big brown eyes. You said we always help people. You said that's what makes us strong. Marcus looked at his daughter. He looked at the woman freezing to death across the street. He cursed under his breath. He grabbed his tool bag from under the seat. Lock the door, Marcus told Bella. Do not open it for anyone but me. He zipped up his jacket and ran across the street. The snow was up to his ankles. When he reached the woman, she was shivering so violently her teeth were chattering like castanets. She was pale, her lips turning blue. She looked to be about 70 years old. Her dress was silk, completely soaked. She had a single diamond earring that caught the light of the street lamp. Ma'am, Marcus said, keeping his hands visible. Ma'am, are you okay? The woman looked up at him. Her eyes were wide with terror, but not of him. She reached out a shaking hand and grabbed his pant leg. Please, she gasped. Please. It's inside. I have to get it. You have to get what? Marcus asked, kneeling down. We need to get you out of the cold. Is your house nearby? No. The woman screamed, trying to stand up, but failing. I dropped it. I made a mistake. The coat. I put the coat in the bin. She pointed at the metal chute. It's just a coat. Ma'am, Marcus said gently. We can get you another coat. You're going to freeze. You don't understand. She sobbed. My husband made it. The bird. The silver bird is inside. It's all I have left. She tried to claw at the metal door of the bin. It was locked tight. These bins were designed to keep people from stealing donations. Marcus looked at her desperation. It wasn't about a coat. He saw the grief in her eyes. It was the same look he had seen in the mirror for a year after his wife passed away. He looked at the heavy padlock on the bin. He looked at the woman who was seconds away from hypothermia. Okay, Marcus said. Okay, I'm going to get it. But then you have to come with me to the van. Deal? Yes, she whispered. Yes, please. Marcus pulled out his tension wrench and a rake pick from his tool bag. Before he was a delivery driver, Marcus had been a machinist at a factory downtown. He knew metal. He knew gears. He knew how things locked and unlocked. His hands were numb, but muscle memory took over. He inserted the tools into the padlock. He felt the pins. 1 click. 2 clicks. 3. The lock popped open. Marcus yanked the padlock off and pulled the heavy metal lever. The chute door swung open. It was dark inside the bin, filled with bags of old clothes. Where is it? Marcus asked. It's a gray wool coat, the woman cried. A vintage trench coat. Marcus reached inside. He felt around. He grabbed a plastic bag. No. He grabbed a denim jacket. No. Then, his fingers brushed against heavy wool. He pulled it out. Is this it? The woman let out a sound that was half sob, half laugh. Yes. Yes. She grabbed the coat from him. She didn't put it on. Instead, she frantically felt the lining of the pocket. She froze. No, she whispered. No, no, no. What? Marcus asked. She pulled something out of the pocket. It was a small, mechanical bird made of silver. It fit in the palm of her hand. It was intricate, with tiny feathers etched into the metal and little ruby eyes. But it was crushed. The wing was bent at a sickening angle. The body was dented. Gears were hanging out of the side. It must have been at the bottom of the bin, crushed by the weight of the other donations. The woman stared at the broken thing in her hand. She let out a wail that cut through the wind. He's gone, she wept. He's really gone. Ma'am, Marcus said, looking around nervously. Lights were turning on in the mansion across the street. Someone had heard the scream. We have to go, Marcus said. He grabbed the wool coat and wrapped it around her shoulders. He scooped her up in his arms. She was light, fragile as a bird herself. He ran back across the street to the van. Bella unlocked the door immediately. Daddy, is she okay? Bella asked, her eyes wide. She's really cold, Bella. Grabbed the emergency blanket from the back. Marcus put the woman in the passenger seat. He reclined it. Bella scrambled to cover her with the foil emergency blanket and their spare wool throw. Marcus jumped into the driver's seat. He tried the ignition again. Click, click, click. Nothing. Come on, Marcus yelled, slamming his hand on the wheel. The woman next to him was shaking so hard the whole seat vibrated. She was mumbling names. Arthur. Julian. I'm sorry. Marcus knew he couldn't wait here. The car had no heat. She needed a warm room, hot water, and shelter immediately. He looked at the mansion across the street. The lights were on, but the gates were closed. If he went there, carrying a half-conscious woman, and they saw his broken van, he didn't trust it. He didn't trust this neighborhood. He looked at his phone. A notification popped up. Uber, $140 to your location. Impossible. He looked at Bella. Baby, are you buckled? Yes, Daddy. Marcus put the van in neutral. They were on a slight incline. If he could get it rolling, maybe he could pop the clutch and get it to start one last time. It was a trick he learned when he was a teenager. He opened his door. He put one foot on the icy pavement and pushed. The van groaned. It moved an inch. He pushed harder, slipping on the snow. Come on. He grunted. The van started to roll. Slowly at first, then picking up speed as the hill took over. Marcus jumped back in and slammed the door. He waited until the speedometer hit 10 miles per hour. He stomped on the clutch and turned the key. The engine roared to life, sputtering and coughing, but running. Thank you, God, Marcus breathed. He didn't turn around. He didn't drive toward the mansion. He put the van in gear and drove away from the golden streetlights, away from the iron gates, and back toward the city. Back to the neighborhood where the streetlights were broken, but where he knew he wouldn't be arrested for trying to save a life. The drive took 20 minutes. The woman, who introduced herself in a whisper as Eleanor, drifted in and out of consciousness. Bella held her hand the whole way, rubbing her cold fingers. It's okay, Miss Eleanor, Bella whispered. My daddy fixes everything. He fixed my dollhouse. He fixed the toaster. He will fix you. Marcus glanced at the rearview mirror. He saw his daughter's face, so full of faith in him. He felt a heavy rock in his gut. He had lost his job last week when the factory downsized. This delivery gig was all he had, and now the van was dying. He had rent due, and now he had a wealthy, freezing woman in his passenger seat who was clutching a broken silver bird like it was the crown jewels. They pulled up to his apartment building. It was a squat, brick building with bars on the lower windows. Marcus killed the engine. It shuddered and died with a finality that told him it wasn't starting again anytime soon. He carried Eleanor up the 4 steps to the front door and down the hallway to apartment 1B. Inside, the apartment was small, but it was neat. Marcus kept it spotless. The furniture was mismatched, stuff he had found on curbs and repaired. A coffee table made from a pallet, sanded smooth and stained dark oak. A bookshelf he built from crates. And in the corner, their Christmas tree. It wasn't a real tree. Real trees cost $50. Marcus had taken an old wooden ladder, opened it up, and wrapped green fairy lights around the rungs. Bella had drawn pictures of ornaments on paper and taped them to the wood. Marcus laid Eleanor on the sofa. He pulled off her wet heels and the soaked silk dress, wrapping her in his own oversized flannel robe. He piled every blanket they owned on top of her. Bella ran to the kitchen. I'll make the cocoa, Daddy. Careful with the kettle, Marcus warned. He knelt beside Eleanor. He rubbed her hands, trying to get the circulation back. Eleanor, can you hear me? Marcus asked. Eleanor's eyes fluttered open. She looked at the peeling paint on the ceiling. She looked at the ladder Christmas tree. Then she looked at Marcus. Where am I? She whispered. You're safe, Marcus said. My name is Marcus. This is my daughter, Bella. We're in my apartment. The storm was too bad to get you home, and my van died. Eleanor tried to sit up, but she was too weak. She reached for her pocket. The bird, she rasped. Where's the bird? Marcus reached into the pocket of the wet wool coat he had hung by the door. He pulled out the silver bird. It looked even worse in the light of the apartment. The delicate gears were smashed. The silver casing was dented inward. He handed it to her gently. Eleanor took it. She stared at it, and tears began to slide down her face again. My husband made this, she whispered. Arthur. He was a master toy maker. He made this for our son, William, before William went to Vietnam. He never came back. She ran a thumb over the broken wing. Arthur died 10 years ago. This bird, it was the only thing that still worked. It used to sing. It sang William's favorite lullaby. She looked at Marcus, her eyes hollow. My nephew, Julian, he runs the company now. He told me I was crazy. He told me I was holding on to trash. He told me I belong in a home. Tonight, I ran away. I just wanted to donate my old clothes, to do something useful. I didn't realize the bird was in the pocket until it was too late. She closed her hand over the crushed metal. It's broken, she said, her voice dull. Just like me. Useless. Bella walked over, holding a mug of hot chocolate with two hands. She set it on the table. She looked at the bird. Then she looked at her father. Daddy, Bella said. Marcus looked at his daughter. He knew that look. Daddy, can you fix it? Marcus looked at the bird. It was a masterpiece of engineering. Miniature clockwork. Tiny springs. It would require tools he didn't have. It would require a microscope. It would require a miracle. He looked at Eleanor. She looked like she had given up on everything. I don't know, baby, Marcus said quietly. It's pretty bad. But you're the best fixer in the world, Bella insisted. You fixed the world. She meant the globe lamp he had repaired for her last birthday. Marcus looked at his hands. Rough, scarred, black with grease. But steady. He remembered the years he spent on the assembly line, fixing the machines when they jammed. He remembered the feeling of gears clicking into place. He looked at Eleanor, shivering under his old blankets. He took a deep breath. Let me see it, Marcus said. Eleanor hesitated, then handed him the bird. Marcus stood up. He walked over to the small table in the corner where he kept his few tools. He turned on the desk lamp. He put on his reading glasses. He took a sewing needle from a kit. He gently prodded one of the gears. It moved. Just a fraction. He looked back at the two women. You two get some sleep, Marcus said. I'm going to stay up for a while. You're going to fix it? Eleanor asked, a tiny spark of something lighting in her eyes. I'm going to try, Marcus said. He sat down. Outside, the wind howled and the snow piled up against the basement windows. Inside, the apartment was quiet, except for the soft breathing of his daughter and the stranger on his couch. Marcus picked up a tiny screwdriver. He took a deep breath. Merry Christmas, he whispered to himself. He began to work. He didn't know that across town, in the mansion on the hill, police were already arriving. He didn't know that Julian Vance was telling the officers that his aunt had been kidnapped. He didn't know that by morning, his face would be on the news as a wanted man. All he knew was that a bird needed to sing, and he was the only one who could make it happen. The apartment was quiet, except for the low hum of the refrigerator and the wind howling outside the basement windows. Marcus sat at his small kitchen table, bathed in the yellow glow of a single desk lamp. His eyes burned. His back ached. It was 3 a.m. on Christmas morning, and he was trying to perform surgery on a piece of metal no bigger than a walnut. He held the crushed silver bird in his left hand. In his right hand, he held a sewing needle he had heated over the stove burner until it was red hot. He didn't have his professional tools. He had sold most of them to pay rent last month. All he had was a pair of tweezers from a first aid kit, a small screwdriver from a glasses repair kit, and his own steady, calloused hands. Marcus took a deep breath and held it. He peered through a magnifying glass he used for reading the fine print on bills. The damage was catastrophic. The main drive gear was bent at a 45-degree angle. The spring that powered the wings had snapped loose. To anyone else, this was a piece of junk. To Julian, Eleanor's nephew, this was trash. But Marcus saw the genius in it. He saw the way the gears interlocked. He saw the love the maker had poured into every tiny screw. He gently inserted the needle into the casing. He used it as a lever to pry the bent metal back into place. 1 millimeter. Then another. Careful, he whispered to himself. Don't snap it. He heard a rustle of blankets behind him. He didn't turn around. He couldn't risk losing his focus. You should be sleeping, Marcus said softly. I can't sleep, Eleanor's voice replied. It was weak, but clearer than before. She had warmed up. Marcus finished the adjustment and set the bird down on a soft cloth. He took off his glasses and rubbed his eyes. He turned around. Eleanor was sitting up on the sofa bed, wrapped in his flannel robe. She was looking at him with a mixture of confusion and wonder. She looked around the tiny apartment, at the mismatched furniture, the peeling linoleum, and the Christmas tree made out of a ladder wrapped in lights. I tried to buy a tree like that once, Eleanor said, pointing at the ladder. A designer tree. Minimalist. It cost $2,000. Marcus chuckled, a tired, dry sound. That one cost me $5 at a garage sale. The lights were $2. It's beautiful, Eleanor said. Then she looked at the table. Why are you doing this, Marcus? You don't know me. I'm just a crazy old woman who broke into your life. You're not crazy, Marcus said. He stood up and walked to the stove to reheat the kettle. And you didn't break in. We invited you. My nephew thinks I'm crazy, she said, pulling the robe tighter. Julian. He took over the company last year. He says handmade toys are obsolete. He says I am obsolete. He wants to sell the estate, put me in a facility, and turn the factory into condos. She looked down at her hands. They were spotted with age, shaking slightly. Maybe he's right. I couldn't even keep a coat safe. I tried to donate it because I wanted to feel useful for 1 second. And I ruined the only thing that mattered. Marcus poured hot water into a mug and handed it to her. He sat on the coffee table across from her. I know how that feels, Marcus said quietly. To be told you're obsolete. Eleanor looked at him. You? I was a master machinist at the auto plant downtown, Marcus said. 10 years. I could listen to an engine and tell you which bolt was loose. I loved it. But then they brought in the robots. Then they sent the jobs overseas. They told me they didn't need guys with grease under their fingernails anymore. They needed guys with computer degrees. He looked at his hands. I've been driving that van for 2 years. Delivering packages. Nobody cares if I can fix a gear. They just care if I can drive fast. And now, he glanced at the window where his dead van was parked outside. Now I can't even do that. Eleanor stared at him. She saw the pain in his eyes, the deep, quiet dignity of a man who had been pushed down but refused to stay down. We're a pair of broken toys, aren't we? Eleanor whispered. Maybe. Marcus smiled sadly. But my daughter, Bella? She thinks broken things are just puzzles waiting to be solved. He stood up. Get some rest, Eleanor. I've got work to do. He went back to the table. He put the magnifying glass back in place. He picked up the tweezers. He worked through the night. He reconnected the spring. He used a file from a nail clipper to smooth down a jagged edge on the wing. He used a drop of olive oil from the kitchen to lubricate the gears. At 6 a.m., the sun began to creep through the basement windows, painting the room in gray light. Marcus set the bird down. His neck was stiff. His fingers were cramping so bad, he could barely make a fist. But it was done. He heard small footsteps running down the hall. Daddy, Daddy, it's Christmas. Bella burst into the room in her pajamas. She stopped when she saw Eleanor sitting up on the couch. Merry Christmas, Miss Eleanor. Bella shouted, running over to give her a hug. Eleanor flinched at first, and used to such sudden affection, but then she melted. She wrapped her arms around the little girl. Merry Christmas, sweetie. Did Santa come? Bella asked, looking at the ladder tree. There were 2 small gifts under it. A coloring book and a new set of hair beads. It wasn't much, but Bella squealed like it was a pony. Daddy, look. Marcus smiled, leaning against the kitchen counter, holding a cup of cold coffee. I see, baby. Then Bella looked at the table. She saw the silver bird sitting on the white cloth. Did you fix it? Bella whispered. Eleanor held her breath. She stood up slowly, her hand clutching the robe. She walked over to the table. The bird looked different. It wasn't smashed anymore. The wing was straight. The body was smooth. It wasn't perfect. There were tiny scratches where Marcus had used the pliers, but it looked whole. Go ahead, Marcus said softly. Wind it. Eleanor reached out. Her hand was shaking. She pinched the tiny key on the bird's back. She turned it. Click, click, click. She let go. For a second, nothing happened. Eleanor's face fell. Marcus's heart stopped. Then, whir, the silver wings snapped open. They fluttered, up and down, catching the light of the desk lamp. And then, a sound came out. It was a tiny, bell-like melody. Clear and sweet. Rockabye baby, on the treetop. It sang. It actually sang. Eleanor let out a sob that sounded like it had been trapped in her chest for 20 years. She covered her mouth with both hands. She sank into the kitchen chair, weeping uncontrollably. It works, she cried. I haven't heard that. I haven't heard that since William was a baby. She looked up at Marcus through her tears. She looked at this large, tired man in a stained t-shirt standing in a basement kitchen. You are a magician, she whispered. How did you do this? The best jewelers in the city said it couldn't be opened. They looked at the value of the silver, Marcus said, shrugging. I looked at how it worked. Bella clapped her hands. I told you. My daddy can fix anything. Eleanor reached out and took Marcus's hand. She squeezed it hard. You have given me back my son. You have given me back myself. I don't know how I can ever repay you. You don't have to, Marcus said. It's Christmas. He looked at the window. The snow had stopped falling. The sky was a piercing, clear blue. The storm was over. But Marcus felt a knot of dread tighten in his stomach. The roads should be clear, Marcus said, his voice heavy. We need to get you home, Eleanor. Your family, they must be worried sick. Eleanor's face hardened instantly. The joy from the music box faded, replaced by the cold reality of her life. Julian, she said. Yes. He will have called the lawyers by now. He will be furious. I'll drive you, Marcus said. My van is dead, but I can borrow my neighbor's car. He owes me a favor. Marcus, Eleanor said, looking worried. You don't have to drive me all the way to the gate. Julian, he can be difficult. He is not like you. I'm not leaving you on the side of the road, Marcus said firmly. We started this together. We're going to finish it. An hour later, Marcus had secured his neighbor's car, a beat-up Toyota with a cracked windshield, but a working heater. Eleanor had put her dried evening gown back on, though it was wrinkled and stained. She wore the vintage wool coat over it. She looked like a queen who had survived a war. Bella insisted on coming. I want to see the castle, she said. Marcus drove carefully. The roads were plowed but icy. As they got closer to the hills, the knot in his stomach turned into nausea. He saw a police cruiser parked at the entrance to the gated community. Stay calm, Marcus told himself. You did a good thing. You saved her. He pulled up to the main gate of the Vance estate. It was massive, wrought iron, with a camera and a speaker box. Before Marcus could even roll down the window, the gate began to open, but not to let them in. 3 cars came speeding out. 2 were police SUVs. The third was a sleek, silver sports car. They swerved and blocked Marcus's path, cutting him off. Marcus slammed on the brakes. The Toyota skid on the ice, coming to a halt just inches from the police bumper. Daddy, Bella screamed. Hands. Let me see your hands, a police officer shouted, jumping out of the SUV with his gun drawn. Marcus threw his hands up instantly. Don't move, Bella. Don't move. Officer, wait. Eleanor screamed from the passenger seat. The door of the silver sports car flew open. A man stepped out. He was in his 30s, wearing a cashmere coat and expensive leather gloves. He had a face that was handsome but twisted with sneering rage. It was Julian. He marched over to the Toyota. He looked at Marcus, a black man in a hoodie driving a junk car. He looked at Eleanor in the passenger seat. Get out of the car. Julian screamed at Marcus. Get away from her, you predator. Julian, stop. Eleanor yelled, struggling with her seatbelt. He helped me. Helped you? Julian laughed, a cruel, sharp sound. He kidnapped you. We've been looking for you all night. Look at this thug. He probably saw your ring and thought he hit the jackpot. The police officers were moving in now. One of them yanked Marcus's door open. Step out of the vehicle, sir. Now. I'm stepping out, Marcus said, his voice calm but his heart pounding like a hammer. I am not armed. My daughter is in the back seat. They pulled him out. They spun him around and pushed him against the hood of the car. The cold metal burned his cheek. Daddy. Bella was crying now, a high, terrified sound that broke Marcus's heart. Stop it. Eleanor scrambled out of the car. She ran around to the officers. Let him go? I order you to let him go right now. Aunt Eleanor, you're in shock, Julian said, trying to grab her arm. He drugged you. Look at you. You're filthy. I am not drugged. Eleanor slapped Julian's hand away. The sound echoed in the cold air. She reached into her pocket. She pulled out the silver bird. Look at this, she commanded. Julian looked. The officers looked. It was crushed, Eleanor said, her voice ringing with authority. It was destroyed. This man, this good, decent man took me into his home. He fed me. He gave me his own bed. And he spent the entire night fixing the one thing that mattered to me, while you were sitting in your warm house waiting for me to die, so you could sell it. She wound the key. The bird chirped its song in the silence of the driveway. The police officer holding Marcus loosened his grip. He looked at the bird. He looked at Marcus's terrified daughter in the back seat. He looked at Eleanor's fierce face. Ma'am, are you stating that you went with him willingly? The officer asked. Yes, Eleanor said. He saved my life. The officer stepped back. Let him up, guys. Marcus stood up. He brushed the snow off his chest. He looked at Julian. Julian's face was purple with embarrassment and rage. He realized he couldn't arrest Marcus. But he couldn't let him win, either. He reached into his coat pocket. He pulled out a money clip. He peeled off 5 $100 bills. He threw them on the ground at Marcus's feet. They fluttered onto the dirty slush. Fine, Julian sneered. You did a service. Here, 500 bucks. Take it. It's more than you make in a week delivering pizzas. Now get your junk car off my driveway, and don't ever come back. The silence was deafening. $500. It was enough to pay the rent Marcus owed. It was enough to fix his van. It was survival. Bella was watching him from the window, her face streaked with tears. Marcus looked at the money in the mud. Then he looked at Julian. He smiled. It wasn't a happy smile. It was the smile of a man who knew exactly who he was. Keep your money, Marcus said quietly. What? Julian blinked. I didn't do it for you, Marcus said. And I didn't do it for the cash. I did it because it was Christmas. And I did it because my daughter is watching. And I want her to know that a man's worth isn't in his wallet. Marcus turned his back on Julian. He walked over to Eleanor. You okay from here, Eleanor? He asked gently. Eleanor was crying again, silent tears of shame and gratitude. I am so sorry, Marcus. I am so sorry. Not your fault, Marcus said. He got back into the car. He buckled his seatbelt. He looked at Bella. You okay, baby? You didn't take the money, Bella whispered. No, Marcus said. Some things cost too much to sell. He put the car in reverse and backed away. He saw Julian standing there, fuming. He saw Eleanor clutching the silver bird to her heart. Marcus drove away with his head held high. But as soon as they turned the corner and were out of sight, the adrenaline crashed. His hands started to shake. He realized what he had done. He had walked away from the money that could have saved them. He drove home in silence. When they got back to the apartment, there was a bright orange sticker on the door. Eviction notice. 3 days to vacate. Marcus stared at the paper. He thought about his dead van. He thought about his lost job. He thought about the $500 lying in the mud. He walked inside and sat on the couch. He put his head in his hands. He had saved the queen, but he had lost the castle. And he had no idea how he was going to tell his daughter that being a hero might mean being homeless. 3 months had passed since Christmas Eve, and the snow in Detroit had turned into a thick, gray slush that clogged the gutters and splashed onto the sidewalks. For Marcus, life had turned gray too. The $500 he had left in the mud at Julian's mansion was a distant memory, a moment of pride that didn't pay the electric bill. The reality was much colder. His delivery van was dead, sold for scrap metal for $200. Without a vehicle, he couldn't do his delivery gigs. He had applied to 3 different auto shops, but every time he walked in, the managers looked at his resume, looked at him, and said they weren't hiring. One manager had actually whispered that he had heard Marcus was trouble, a rumor that Marcus suspected came straight from Julian Vance. It was a Tuesday morning in March. Marcus stood at the counter of a pawn shop on 8th Street. The fluorescent lights buzzed overhead. In front of him, laid out on the glass counter, was a leather roll-up bag. Inside were his tools, his precision screwdrivers, his calipers, his micrometer, the set of files he had used to fix the silver bird. These weren't just tools, they were his livelihood. They were the only things his own father had left him. The pawn shop owner, a guy named Sal who smoked cheap cigars, looked them over with a bored expression. I can give you $80 for the lot, Sal grunted. 80? Marcus felt his stomach twist. Sal, that micrometer alone is worth 100. These are German steel. Market is flooded, kid, Sal said, blowing smoke. Take it or leave it. Marcus looked down at Bella. She was holding his leg, staring at the tools with big, sad eyes. She knew what those tools meant. She knew that selling them was like a musician selling his guitar. Daddy, no, she whispered. You need those to fix the world. Marcus crouched down. He brushed a braid out of her face. I need to feed my world, he whispered back. He stood up. He took the $80. He walked out of the shop feeling lighter in his pockets, but heavier in his soul. He bought groceries, milk, cereal, a rotisserie chicken, and paid the overdue electric bill so the lights wouldn't get cut off. But it wasn't enough. 2 days later, the sheriff came. It was a polite knock, not like the landlord's pounding. But the paper he handed Marcus was final. The eviction was processed. They had 24 hours to vacate. That night, Marcus packed. It didn't take long. They didn't have much. He put Bella's clothes in a garbage bag. He packed the few dishes they owned in a cardboard box. He took down the ladder Christmas tree, unwrapping the lights carefully. Where are we going, Daddy? Bella asked. She was sitting on her mattress, which was now on the floor because he had sold the bed frame. We're going on an adventure, baby, Marcus lied. His voice cracked. We're going to stay at a hotel for a bit. He meant the shelter on 3rd Avenue. He prayed they had space. The next morning, they carried their boxes out to the curb. The sky was overcast, threatening rain. Marcus sat on his suitcase, staring at the street. He felt like a failure. He had done everything right. He had worked hard. He had been kind. He had saved a woman's life. And this was his reward. A black car turned the corner. It wasn't a police car. It wasn't a taxi. It was a long, sleek limousine with tinted windows. It looked like a spaceship landing on his cracked, pothole-filled street. It slowed down. It stopped right in front of Marcus and Bella. The neighbors were peeking out of their windows. The back door opened. A driver stepped out, a big man in a suit. He held the door open. A cane tapped the pavement. Then, a silver shoe. Eleanor Vance stepped out. She looked different than the last time Marcus had seen her. On Christmas, she had looked frail and broken. Today, she wore a sharp navy blue business suit. Her white hair was styled in a perfect bob. She stood tall. Her eyes were clear and fierce. She looked at the boxes on the curb. She looked at Marcus sitting on his suitcase. She looked at the sadness in his eyes. "You are late," Eleanor said. Marcus blinked. "Excuse me? I tried to call you," Eleanor said, walking over. "But your number is disconnected." "I couldn't pay the bill," Marcus said quietly. He stood up, dusting off his jeans. "Eleanor, what are you doing here?" "If Julian knows you are here." "Julian doesn't know anything," Eleanor interrupted. "Julian is currently in the Caribbean, licking his wounds. The board of directors fired him last week." She smiled, a small, mischievous smile. "It turns out, when the majority shareholder, that's me, walks into a board meeting with a fully functional mechanical bird that everyone thought was destroyed and proves she is perfectly sane, people listen. I took my company back, Marcus." Marcus felt a small smile tug at his lips. "I am glad for you, Eleanor. Really, I didn't come here to brag," she said. She looked at the boxes again. "Are you moving?" "I'm being evicted," Marcus said, the shame burning his neck. Eleanor's face fell. Her expression softened into something heartbroken. "I was afraid of that," she whispered. "I tried to come sooner, Marcus. But the legal battle with Julian, it took everything I had. He froze my assets. He blocked my calls. It took me 3 months to get control again. I was terrified I was too late." She stepped closer. She took his rough hand in her gloved ones. "You saved me, Marcus. You gave me back my life. And I promised myself that the first thing I would do when I got my power back was to come find the man with the magic hands." She turned to the driver. "Alfred, put these boxes in the trunk." "What?" Marcus pulled back. "Eleanor, I can't take your money. I told you that." "I'm not giving you money," Eleanor said sharply. "I'm giving you a ride. Get in the car." Bella tugged on Marcus's shirt. "Daddy, it's a limo. Can we go? Please?" Marcus looked at his daughter. He looked at his eviction notice crumpled in his pocket. He looked at Eleanor, who wasn't asking, but commanding. He nodded. They got in. The inside of the limo smelled like leather and vanilla. Bella's eyes were wide as saucers. She touched the buttons on the door. She looked at the mini fridge. They drove for 20 minutes. They didn't go toward the hills. They drove downtown, toward the industrial district. This was the part of Detroit that had been left behind. Old brick factories with broken windows, empty lots, weeds growing through the concrete. The limo pulled up to a massive, red brick building. It covered a whole city block. The windows were boarded up. The sign above the door was faded, but you could still read the ghost letters. Vance Automata, EST 1920. The car stopped. "Why are we here?" Marcus asked. "This place has been closed for 20 years. Eleanor opened the door. "Come with me." They walked up the steps. Eleanor pulled a heavy ring of iron keys from her purse. She handed them to Marcus. "Open it," she said. Marcus looked at the keys. He looked at the heavy steel door. He unlocked it. He pushed the door open. It groaned on rusty hinges. Inside, it was dusty. Sunlight streamed in through the cracks in the boards, illuminating millions of dancing dust motes. The air smelled of oil and old wood. But the machines were still there. Rows and rows of lathes, milling machines, workbenches. They were covered in tarps, sleeping giants waiting to be woken up. Marcus walked in. He ran his hand over a tarp. He knew the shape underneath. It was a Bridgeport mill, a classic. "This was my husband's original factory," Eleanor's voice echoed in the vast space. "This is where he made the birds. This is where we made the toys that didn't need batteries. The toys that lasted forever. She walked up beside him. When Julian took over, he shut this place down. He said it was too expensive. He moved everything to plastics. He fired the craftsmen. He fired the artists. She turned to Marcus. I am reopening it. Marcus stared at her. You are? Yes. But I have a problem, Eleanor said. I am an old woman who knows how to run a boardroom. I don't know how to run a lathe. I don't know how to look at a broken piece of metal and see a bird inside it. She looked at Marcus's hands. I need a head of restoration, Marcus. I need someone to run this shop. I need someone to hire a team, teach them, and bring the magic back to Vance Toys. Marcus shook his head, overwhelmed. Eleanor, I don't have a degree. I'm a delivery driver. I'm a nobody. You are the man who fixed the unfixable in a basement with a sewing needle, Eleanor said fiercely. You are the man who refused $500 when he was starving because he had dignity. You are exactly who I need. She pulled an envelope from her purse. This is an employment contract, she said. It includes a salary that is, let's just say, substantial. Full benefits for you and Bella. And a 10% stake in the new division. She pointed to the upper level of the factory, where there was a row of windows overlooking the city. And there is a caretaker's apartment upstairs. 3 bedrooms. Brand new kitchen. It comes with the job. Marcus looked at the contract. He looked at the factory floor. He imagined it cleaned up. He imagined the hum of the machines. He imagined teaching Bella how to use a lathe. He looked at Bella. She was running around the empty floor, spinning in circles, laughing. Is this real? Marcus whispered. It is real if you say yes, Eleanor said. Marcus looked at the keys in his hand. They were heavy. They felt like responsibility. They felt like a future. He thought about the pawn shop. He thought about the $80. He thought about the eviction notice. He looked at Eleanor, tears stinging his eyes. I don't have my tools, Marcus choked out. I sold them 2 days ago. Eleanor smiled. She pointed to a large wooden crate in the corner. We bought new ones, she said. Top of the line. Marcus laughed. A real, deep belly laugh that echoed off the rafters. He grabbed Eleanor and hugged her. He picked her up off the ground and spun her around, just like Bella would have. Thank you, he wept. Thank you. Put me down, you giant. Eleanor laughed, patting his back. We have work to do. Marcus put her down. He wiped his face. He looked at the factory. Okay, he said. Okay, let's get to work. Bella ran over. Daddy, do we live here now? Yes, baby, Marcus said, picking her up. We live here, and we're going to fix everything. 5 years is a long time in the life of a city. It is enough time for a baby to start kindergarten. It is enough time for a sapling to become a small tree. And for the old brick factory on the corner of 4th and Main, it was enough time to turn a ghost into a legend. The Vance and Thorne Restoration Company wasn't just a business anymore. It was a landmark. People came from all over the country to bring their broken treasures to the man with the magic hands. They brought clocks that hadn't ticked since the war. They brought dolls with shattered porcelain faces. They brought music boxes that had forgotten their songs. And Marcus fixed them all. But he didn't do it alone. True to his word, Marcus didn't hire engineers with fancy degrees from universities. He hired the people the city had thrown away. He hired Ray, an ex-convict who had learned to carve wood in prison but couldn't get a job because of his record. He hired Sarah, a single mom who had been working 3 jobs just to feed her kids. He hired the old man from the pawn shop, Sal, to manage the inventory because Sal knew the value of everything. The factory floor, once silent and dusty, was now a symphony of noise. The hum of lathes, the screech of saws, the laughter of people who finally had a place where they belonged. And running through it all was Bella. She was 11 now, tall and lanky, with her hair in long braids that swung when she walked. She didn't just play with dolls anymore. She wore a shop apron covered in grease. She could strip a gearbox faster than most of the adults. She was the heart of the shop, greeting customers with a smile that could melt a blizzard. But time, while kind to the factory, was not kind to everyone. It was December again. The snow was falling in Detroit, thick and heavy, just like it had 5 years ago. Marcus stood by a hospital bed in the master bedroom of the mansion on the hills. The room smelled of lavender and antiseptic. Eleanor lay in the bed. She was smaller now. The fierce energy that had helped her reclaim her company had faded, leaving behind a frail woman who was ready to rest. Marcus held her hand. His hand was still rough, still scarred. But now he wore a watch that worked and clothes that fit. "Don't look so sad, Marcus," Eleanor whispered. Her voice was thin, like paper. "I'm not sad," Marcus lied, forcing a smile. "I'm just thinking about that first night. You were a lot of trouble, you know that." Eleanor let out a weak laugh. "I was, but it was worth it." She turned her head to look at Bella, who was sitting in a chair reading a book aloud. "Bella," Eleanor said. "Yes, Auntie Eleanor?" Bella stood up and took her other hand. "Promise me something," Eleanor said. "Promise me you will never let the world make you hard. You have a light, child. Don't let them blow it out." "I promise," Bella said, tears slipping down her cheeks. Eleanor looked back at Marcus. She pointed to the nightstand. There was a small, velvet box sitting there. "That is for you," she said. "But you are not allowed to open it until after the lawyers are done. Do you hear me?" "I hear you," Marcus said, choking back a sob. "Good," Eleanor sighed. She closed her eyes. "I think I'm going to sleep now. That bird. I can hear the birds singing." She passed away an hour later, peacefully, with the people who loved her holding her hands. She didn't die alone in the cold. She died warm. The funeral was massive. It seemed like half the city showed up. Not just the wealthy business partners, but the people from Marcus's neighborhood, the employees from the factory, the people whose heirlooms had been saved. Then came the reading of the will. It was held in the library of the mansion. The room was cold and imposing, filled with leather books that no one read. Julian was there. Marcus hadn't seen Julian in 5 years. The nephew looked older, his face puffy, his expensive suit straining at the buttons. He sat on the other side of the room, refusing to look at Marcus. He tapped his foot impatiently. The lawyer, a stern man named Mr. Henderson, sat at the heavy oak desk. He put on his glasses. "I will now read the last will and testament of Eleanor Vance," he began. Julian sat up straighter. He looked confident. He was the blood relative. He was the Vance. He expected the kingdom. "To my nephew, Julian," the lawyer read. Julian smirked. "I leave the sum of $1. The lawyer continued, his voice flat. The silence in the room was absolute. Julian's smirk froze. "And," the lawyer went on, "I leave him my shares in the plastics division, which, as of this morning, has filed for bankruptcy." Julian stood up, his face turning purple. "This is a joke. She can't do this. She was senile. That man." He pointed a shaking finger at Marcus. "He manipulated her." "Sit down, Mr. Vance," the lawyer snapped, "or I will have security remove you." Eleanor was of sound mind, and she was very specific. Julian collapsed into his chair, looking like a balloon that had lost all its air. "To Marcus Thorne," the lawyer read, turning to Marcus. Marcus held his breath. He didn't care about the money. He just wanted to keep the factory. He wanted to keep his people employed. "I leave the Vance estate, the mansion on the hill, and the entirety of the Vance and Thorne Restoration Company, including the factory, the land, and all patents past and future." The lawyer looked up. "She also left a personal note. To the man who fixed what I broke. You built the home I never had. Now it is yours." Marcus put his head in his hands. He felt Bella's arm around his shoulder. He owned it. All of it. The factory, the jobs, the future. They were safe. No one could ever evict them again. Julian stood up. He didn't scream this time. He just looked at Marcus with a look of pure defeat. He walked out of the room, out of the mansion, and out of their lives for good. Later that night, Marcus sat in the factory office. It was the old office that used to belong to Eleanor's husband. It overlooked the work floor. It was quiet. The machines were sleeping. Marcus reached into his pocket and pulled out the small velvet box Eleanor had given him on her deathbed. He opened it. Inside wasn't a diamond. It wasn't a check. It was a single, golden gear. It was tiny, intricate, and made of solid gold. And underneath it was a folded piece of paper. Marcus unfolded the note. "My dear Marcus, do you remember the bird? You fixed it with a needle and a steady hand. But you told me once that you had sold your tools to feed your daughter. You told me you felt like a failure. This gear is the master cog from the very first toy my husband ever sold. It started this whole empire. He always told me, the engine doesn't work without the smallest gear. You were the gear that made my life work again. You are the gold, Marcus. Never forget that. Love, Eleanor." Marcus held the golden gear in his palm. He cried, letting the tears fall onto the polished wood of the desk. He wasn't crying for the wealth. He was crying because he had spent his whole life feeling like a spare part, like something easily replaced. Eleanor had seen him as the most important piece of the machine. "Daddy." Bella stood in the doorway. She was wearing her favorite Christmas sweater. "The shop bell rang," she said. "Someone is downstairs." "We're closed, baby," Marcus said, wiping his eyes. "It's Christmas Eve." "I know," Bella said. "But he looks like we used to look." Marcus stood up. He put the golden gear in his pocket. He walked down the metal stairs to the factory floor. Standing in the entryway, shaking snow off a thin jacket, was a young man. He couldn't have been more than 20. He was shivering, and he was holding the hand of a little boy who was looking at the big machines with wide, hungry eyes. The young man looked terrified. He clutched a plastic bag to his chest. "I'm sorry," the man stammered when he saw Marcus. "I saw the lights. I know you're a big fancy company now. I probably can't afford you." Marcus walked closer. He saw the worn-out shoes. He saw the way the man stood in front of the boy to block the wind from the door. "What do you have there, son?" Marcus asked. The young man pulled a wooden train out of the bag. It was split down the middle. "It was my dad's," the man whispered. "I wanted to give it to my son for Christmas. I tried to glue it, but I made it worse. I wanted him to have something special." He looked down at his shoes. "I have $20, the man said. "I know it's not enough." Marcus looked at the broken train. It was a simple fix. A little wood glue, a clamp, maybe some sanding. 10 minutes of work. He looked at the young father. He saw the fear in his eyes, the fear of disappointing his child on Christmas morning. It was a fear Marcus knew better than anyone. Marcus knelt down. He looked at the little boy. "Do you like trains?" Marcus asked. The boy nodded shyly. Marcus stood up. He put a hand on the young father's shoulder. "Put your money away," Marcus said. "But I can't pay you," the man said, panicking. Bella stepped forward. She stood next to her father, tall and proud. She looked at the man, and then she looked at the silver bird that sat on the counter, the bird that had started it all. She smiled, and it was the same smile she had given Eleanor in the basement 5 years ago. "We don't charge for Christmas miracles," Bella said. Marcus smiled at his daughter. He gestured toward the back of the shop. "Come on in," Marcus said to the man. "The coffee is hot, and the tools are warm. Let's see what we can do." As they walked into the workshop, the silver bird on the counter suddenly clicked. The gears whirred to life, and the tiny mechanical wings began to flap. "Rockabye baby," on the treetop. The bird sang its song, clear and sweet, filling the warm factory with the music of second chances. Outside, the snow kept falling, covering the city in white, but inside, everything was exactly as it should be. Nothing was broken anymore.